I think it's glitching. Hello, everyone. See, we already got a bunch of people waiting for us.
Cool.
How's it going, everyone? Today we got Mr. Ed Moats of ED'S AQUATIC EXOTICS. Today we're going to be going over a tour of Ed's lovely fish room of a lot of exotic different things you never really see in the hobby. So I'm pretty excited, to be honest with you guys. Feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself, Ed.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Ed Moats. I'm the owner and operator of ED'S AQUATIC EXOTICS, where I specialize in critically endangered fish. I currently have about 17 to 20 different species of critically endangered fish I work with, and I'm located in southwestern PA. I've been in the hobby for quite a few years. Been taking care of my own aquarium since I was very young. So now I just focus on critically endangered fish here in the Philippines.
Nice. So what is your most favorite fish you ever worked with for the endangered?
Probably one of the ones I just got in June of last year, which is Crocodon audax, and the location is Los Pinos. It's probably one of my favorites.
Never heard of it, but I would love to see what it looks like.
Well, you'll get to see it. They're actually in a special breeding program with the Working Group and with the American Live Bears Association right now. They're on the verge of extinction in the wild. So These programs have initiated special breeding programs to grow their numbers. And the hope is in the future to reintroduce them back into their natural wild.
That's pretty exciting. That's one thing I've always wanted to do is reintroduce a population back into the wild.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So that's one thing I've always wanted to do is breed a fish and reintroduce it back into the population.
Yeah. Well, I've had people say, you're breeding fish in an aquarium. How is that conservation? There's actually 2 species of goodeids over the last 5 years that were reintroduced back into the wild that were extinct in the wild. And they were reintroduced from populations from private breeders and hobbyists. So it's more than just breeding fish. I mean, there is a really good chance that in the future, more of these species will be introduced in the wild. And part of the problem in Mexico, where all these fish come from, Mexico in the last 15 months has had a severe drought, and there are waterways that are completely drying out. Farming, runoff from farming, invasive species, and a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, there's one particular species that they're working with in the special breeding program. Their only location in the wild is now a Walmart.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Only a Walmart. That's awesome. All right, I guess we'll say hi to some of the people we got here so far. We got Joe in the building tonight. We got Jeff in the building. Hi, guys. We got Margaret and John. We got David's Aquatics here tonight. We got Jonathan already here for us. All right. So people starting to pop in. That's pretty exciting. Only Walmart is one location.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, and it was the only location. So with goodeids, there can be a species in different locations, and keeping that location, which is part of their ESU, is important because as these fish have isolated, they develop certain traits over time, and some of them have actually become new species. So as I go around the fish room with you guys tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about locations in ESUs. So with the conservation aspect of it, it's important to have that stuff. So if you didn't have the ESU and the location data, and they're just an aquarium strain, they're less likely to be used in the conservation method, because if there's a particular location, they want to have the fish that came from that location because they find it's easier to adapt to the location.
So that's the importance of the location on the goodeids so much then.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. There's people that just want to breed them for their hobby. That's fine too. So one of the things I talk about on my channel is, if you just want to breed the fish for the aquarium, that's fine. But if you want to be part of the conservation of them, it's important to have those ESUs and locations. So either one is fine. It's your choice. I'm one of those people. I let people do what they want to do in their fish room. I don't have the right to tell people what they want to do. There are
Yep.
a lot of people that work with critically endangered fish that get pretty demonstrative and opinionated. I'm just here to help people, and I let them make the decision. If you want to do the conservation aspect, that's great. Happy to help you. If you just want to breed for the hobby, that's fine too. That's your choice. And if there's something I can do to help you, I will.
Yep. That's pretty good of you to do that. It's pretty nice. Yeah, I know. I never understood the importance of that, but that makes more sense. It's more of the conservation in the long run if they need to pull them.
Yeah, and so all I ever tell people is if you're working with these fish and you're either trading them or selling them or whatever you're doing, just be transparent. If you don't know the location data, just say so. There's no shame in it. So for a person like me who works on the conservation aspect of it, I'm going to look for those ESUs and stuff like that. And it's important to me because of the bloodlines I keep. But that's all I basically ever tell people. There's no wrong way of working with them unless you're not being transparent with what you're doing. There's no shame in either side. It's just certain people are looking for certain things. So here in my fish room, all of my fish come from 5 breeders in the country. And they're all people I work with either the American Live Bearers Association or the Goodyear Working Group. And all of my fish that are here in this fish room that are critically endangered are certified and registered through the CARES program.
Okay. That's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. Now, how do you get certified by the CARES program?
Okay, so the CARES program is a pretty cool program. So I'm actually a speaker for them, and I used to be a chair for them. So how it works, we have a couple scientists. We have Dr. Paul Loisel, we have Dr. John Lyons, and we have Dr. Mickey Tobler. And all of these gentlemen are research scientists that go out in the field and specialize in their field. So what you would do, you would go onto the website if you have a critically endangered fish. There's a couple ways you can check to make sure if it's critically endangered. You can check with the website through the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which is the ICUN, or you can go onto the CARES site and look up. If your fish are listed and you would like to have them registered, you go on to the CARES website, which is caresforfish.org, and you would register your fish. It takes like 10 minutes to register them. They'll ask you for a picture. It doesn't have to be magazine quality, just as long as it's clear enough for them to be able to identify them.
Yep.
You send the email, and usually in about a week or two, they'll get back to you with a confirmation. If your fish have been confirmed, what I recommend to people, keep that email. Is your record. But what I also do, I have a certificate that I make a PDF file so that whenever I send fish out to people, I send a copy of my certification for my fish to show that they have been authenticated. So, but what it is, just because I've got the fish registered, like say if I was sending fish to you,
Yep.
and you wanted to register the fish that I sent you, which I'm not, it's not a requirement to get fish from me, but I really hope people would do that because I really believe in the program. But let's say you get some fish from me. Let's say you get my Cracodon audax El Tabasso, known as the Black Prince. So once you've received your fish and everything's fine, I will send you a copy of the PDF showing us the authenticity, the data was confirmed, who confirmed it, and all that. So then, if you wanted to register your fish, you would do the same thing. So each time fish change hands, registration. And what happens with that is they keep a database of all of that. Now, here's the issue that with a lot of people register their fish, and you never hear from them again. The way the program is set up, quarterly, they just ask for a real quick update on what you have if they produced. It doesn't have to be some big dissertation. It could be still maintaining Cracodon audax El Tabasso. They dropped 4 sets of fry in the last year or a quarter or whatever. And just as little quick updates. It literally takes a few minutes. So one of the issues with the program is we have people that register their fish and then you never hear from them again. So it's more than just getting your fish registered. And it's great that people want to get them registered to make sure they're working with a pure bloodline. But just maintaining that, also keeping informed with information on how often. So I usually, because I have so many, I usually update mine every few months. But in general practice, it's usually quarterly. Just send, they'll ask you for a real quick email. It's very simple.
Okay.
But what I like about the CARES program, it's one of the few programs offered to hobbyists where you have actual researchers and scientists identifying your fish. And why is that important? Those of you who may be familiar have heard of the Eisenai complex, which are Xenotoca eiseni, Xenotoca lion's eye, Xenotoca doadroi. Up until 2016, those three species were considered one species. And what had happened through them being isolated in waterways, they developed into their own species. And through DNA sequencing, they found that they were different species. So to look at each of three of these fish, they look exactly the same. So you have to have a really trained eye to know what to look for. So it's important to have that ESU and location data. So if you were going to register those fish with the program, you would have to have that location data. So why is that important? In the last year, the CARES program has had over 10 people register Eisenai complex that were hybrids and could not be registered. They didn't even know they were hybrids. So that in itself is important for why the program is so important. And again, it just depends on what you want to work with within the program, whether you want to work conservation or whatever. People tend to think it's a little bit too much work. I disagree. If I can do a report on my entire fish room in 20 minutes, and I have over 100 tanks, it shouldn't be that difficult. And to register them literally 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And just keeping up with it. You can register all you want, but the big part of it is following up and giving updates on them. And it's a good resource for finding other people that work with critically endangered fish. So it's and I also like the Goodyear Working Group. The Goodyear Working Group is a good group to connect with also.
Nice. No, that's great to know. I didn't know all that, but it definitely opened my eyes more to it, because I never really was too big on the location, because I just kept them as a pet. I never thought they would actually take the ones from our fish rooms and possibly in the future reintroduce them. But that makes a lot of sense, and I'm kind of surprised that they got branched off and kind of created their own little complexes too. That's kind of neat.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a big misunderstanding with working with critically endangered fish. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of us that work with critically endangered fish get labeled as gatekeepers. There are a few people that can be overzealous. I try to be respectful and mindful that people are still learning. So I always tell people, no, it's not that we're gatekeepers. If you're going to really work with these fish and really do well by them, it's best to understand what practices works best, and then we're willing to share that with you, and then you can make the decision for yourself. But for me, from a conservation standpoint, and it's just the way I choose to run my fish room, I choose to I've only got maybe 2 fish in this fish room that do not have location in ESUs, but they are not critically endangered fish.
Okay.
Just my choice, though.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. You keeping everything else pretty serious. You want to have something you have fun with no stress. All right. That's awesome. Thanks for enlightening everybody about that. Would you like to start your tour?
Sure. Let me get things ready here.
All right. I'll put you on the big screen. Put myself on the big screen. Go back.
I'm trying to find the best way I can get my screen wider.
Right there. No, the other way.
Yeah, but so now, okay.
Now
so folks, I apologize. I may be struggling a little bit to get these. So this fish right here is one of the first fish. This was fish up until 5 years ago was completely extinct in the wild. This is Scyphia francese. They come from the Rio Tuxtlan, which is in Milwaukee, Mexico. Dr. Miller, Robert Miller, brought these back in 1976 and brought them to the National Aquarium in Detroit. He went back shortly after, just a few years later, and they were completely gone in the wild that quick. So they thought they were lost in the hobby. They were found again. And a few years ago, Dr. John Lyons, who works with us with the CARES program and a few other private breeders, sent some of their fish to Aqua Lab, which is in Jalisco, Mexico, and they grew their numbers there, and they were reintroduced back into the wild maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's been in the last 5. These fish are herbivores, so a lot of people say Skiffia are difficult to maintain. They're herbivores. If you give them too much protein, they're prone to bloat, just like Malawi cichlids. So giving them a herbivore diet, they do best. And the next fish, sorry, I got to get down on my chair. These are Zoogoneticus tequila. This is another fish that was extinct in the wild. These fish were introduced a few years ago also, and this fish is one of the biggest success stories of a reintroduction of an animal back into the wild after being extinct. I'm sorry for the reflection also. My lights around, I have so many aquariums that the lights reflect off the glass so much.
No worries, it happens. I've been there too.
So I have right now 6 colonies of this fish I'm working with.
Wow.
So that's one of the things I tell people. One of the biggest mistakes people make working with critically endangered fish is keeping all of your fish in one tank.
Yep.
Because I don't care how much experience you have, anything can happen. And if you wipe out an entire tank and lose a whole bloodline, then you're just starting from the get-go again.
Nope, I agree. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Here we go. So right here, this is another line of Skiffia francese. Now, these fish, remember when I said those fish were sent to Aqua Lab for reintroduction back into the wild?
Yep.
These fish right here come directly from Aqua Lab. So what's interesting about this line, they worked it out. It's a little smaller than the ones I have here, but because these came directly from the lab and this bloodline was reintroduced back into the wild, I wanted to have that. And I'm sorry, guys, I was telling Jason, when I shut the air off here so I can hear people on streams, the fish tend to hide. So I'll do my best to show you what they look like. So I also have a couple fish I breed here that aren't critically endangered. They're an obscure live bearer. These are Alfaro catratus. They're called the live-bearing knife fish. And they're in the Posilia family. They're an omnivore. These guys can have anywhere from 30 to 50 babies at one time.
Wow, that's a lot for a live bear.
What's that?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I was expecting you to say like 10 to 15, like a good day usually.
Well, these aren't a goodie. These are in the Posilia family, so they're not a guppy, but they're in the moppy guppy genus. So they're similar. They're in the Posilia family.
Gotcha.
So I also do a couple different fish for special breeding with my aquarium society. So I do a few cories. So this cory is a really cool cory, and it's kind of hard to find in the hobby. It's Gastrodermis napoensis, called the napoensis cory. And they've been breeding like crazy for me now. They don't really start breeding until they're about a year or 2 old. And they get labeled as very difficult to breed, where in actuality, they just need to mature out.
Okay. And it looks like there's 2 different varieties. Are they sexable, male and female?
So I'm going to show you real quick. Here's how you tell the males from the females. I'm going to see if I can get him. Note the males have a black tip dorsal. See that guy right there in the back?
Yep.
The males have a black tip dorsal, and of course the females are bigger. So there's that one right in the center in the back. That's a female.
Okay. Yeah, no, because I noticed the black tips. I was like, let me ask.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you what, I really like. I'm not really a big fan of catfish. Plecos are not my thing. Cories, I'm having some fun working with some of the cories, but they're not. Yeah, I'm just doing them for BAP with my aquarium society I'm affiliated with.
Gotcha.
Okay, my male was just here. There's the female. So, Jason, this is the one I was telling you that's one of my favorites. Here we go. So this is Cracodon audax Los Pinos. The one on the bottom is the male, and I hope he turns sideways so you can see the color on him.
Yep.
So this particular line, the location, they're almost gone in the wild. So we're working to redevelop that, re-strengthen that bloodline. And of course, they go hiding as soon as... I'll get you some more of them here in the future, though. I have a couple tanks of them. Here are my killies. This is Pachypanchek saccharamii. So they're a Madagascar killie. They are critically endangered. And Dr. Loisel, who works with us with the CARES program, was the gentleman who brought these fish back into the hobby. And he only brought a few pairs back. And those pairs are what comprise the bloodline in the hobby today.
Wow. So that couple pairs of fish put in a lot of work over the years, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Now, do you find where the fish have been bred so many times that they have more defects with birth, their babies?
So here's what it is. That is a common misconception. Fish are not mammals. So here a prime example is the Zephyrus Genetic Biolab in Texas.
Yep.
Have the same bloodlines of fish that they've had for 100 years. So if you start getting a defect, what you do is you call that defect. So I had a species of fish here a few years back that was starting to throw crooked spines. So what I did, as soon as I would see a crooked spine, I'd remove it. Eventually, over time, the bloodline will homogenize itself and go back to its normal form. So I respect when people say, "Oh, I need new bloodline." So I'll use Goodeids as a prime. What's the word I would use? So the audax, there were only so many audax brought into the country. There's some of these fish, they only come from one small waterway that maybe could be the size of your living room. So they're already to the point where they're line bred, inbred in through, but that doesn't apply with fish. So what happens when you start getting a defect, you call out for that. So every so often in some of my lines, I'll find one fish with a crooked spine early on. I immediately remove that fish. So if you're not culling properly and calling for over time, those undesirable traits breed into the line and then they throw more. So you eventually over time can homogenize a line. Prime example is, like I said, with those killies I just showed you a few minutes ago.
Yep.
Dr. Loisel only brought 6 pairs back with him. That was it. They've been actively being bred in this country since 1994. So from those 6 pair, all of these fish come from. So, and it's like I said, so what you have to do is just make sure you're breeding your top quality fish and making sure that you're not perpetuating deformities and defects. These guys right here are some of my baby Audax Los Pinos. So I'm going to go through real quick with this. So I have 2 racks of 10 gallons where I'm raising young right now. These guys right here are Scyphia multipunctata. This one here is extinct in the wild. So their location, Lago de Camacuaro, was actually covered over for farming. So this fish no longer exists in the wild.
Wow. It's a pretty little fish, too.
It is. And these are young. Their colors have not come in well yet. So do you see the ones with the bigger dark spots?
Yep.
Those are males. As they get older, that black will go over a lot of their body, and the yellow will go to a deep gold, almost canary yellow, depending.
Really?
Yeah. So again, this is another Scyphia, and like I said with Scyphia are herbivores. So they need a lot of plant matter in their diet. So that's the number one issue a lot of people that try to breed these fish and keep them do wrong. They feed too much animal protein, and that causes bloat in their system, similar to what it is with Malawi cichlids. So herbivore fish have a elongated intestinal tract, and they do that well so they can process the foods they eat, such as vegetables and stuff. In the wild, where these guys come from, they would be picking off algae from the rocks on the bottom of the, because most of these areas are pretty shallow. So over time, their bodies have evolved to process that food. Herbivore fish like goldfish, Scyphia, any Scyphias, and Malawi cichlids have elongated intestinal tracts. If they're getting too much protein and they're not getting nutritional fiber from plant matter to push that out, they get constipated, they can get bloat, and they can get swim bladder issues from it.
Okay, wow. Good to know. And now, are Gadiids, considered herbivores too, or are they more of an omnivore in your opinion?
So here's what it is. Scyphia, there's a few different species of Scyphia. The Scyphia family are herbivore. The Crocodon families are omnivore with a slight bit of carnivore in them. And then there's others that are omnivore. So it just depends. So this is what I tell people. I'm actually in the process of working on a video for my channel right now. There's no such thing as a catch-all food for fish. So you have to know what type of fish you have and feed appropriately from there. So, I'm not going to single anyone out, but when people buy these staple diets, they get they're being led and given the misconception that's a catch-all for every fish. That's absolutely not true at all. So it depends on the species. It depends on what they would be eating in the wild and how they process their food. So yeah, a lot of people are like, how are you doing so well with Scyphia? Well, I feed them what's appropriate to them. So I give them a little bit of live baby brine a couple times a week, but predominantly I'm feeding nori kelp to them. And then I'm doing spirulina, and then a couple times a week I just do like a protein flake of some type and a little freeze-dried bread. 80 to 85% of their food given to them in a week is vegetable matter, and that's the key with them.
I think that's where I ran into issues with, what is it, the Xenotokia, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Xenotokia, the drow?
Yeah.
I kept eating too much, I think, protein, and I wiped out the whole colony. I was very upset, but I think it was the protein, to be honest.
Yeah. So, and that's what it is. So, I mean, and it's an honest mistake. It's not, but that's where a lot of the issue comes from. So here's a little guy. I've got a couple that were just born today. These are also Crocodon audax los pinos. So this baby, I don't know if you can tell how big he is. He's less than 12 hours old. And what I do is I'll put the pregnant female in a 10-gallon tank with some guppy grass. When she drops the fry, I take her out and I put the female in a tank by herself for about a week or two. And the reason I do that is Goodeids are viviparous, which means they don't develop eggs that hatch in the female body and then they release the babies like a normal live bear. These babies actually have an umbilical cord called a trophotania, and they attach to the inside wall of the mother in the uterus and actually feed from the mother just like a human baby would, developing in the mother. So they're taking nutrients from the mother. So after she drops, I like to give the female a few weeks to regroup so that she's not getting impregnated again, because it can take a lot out of them.
Okay.
So this is a species that isn't critically endangered, but it's a Goodeiid that I really like. This is Atropinus. I got these from my good friend up north in Erie, PA. He's been breeding these for years. These particular fish when they get to be an adult, get to be about 7 inches long.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a big fish.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's domestic variotis in there, as you can see. I just didn't have the heart to take. He was left in there, and I didn't have the heart to remove him because he's doing so well. These are my Amicus splendens. I have 8 colonies of these right now. This line, Rio Techlin, and this is Greg Sage's bloodline. So we can trace these back generations to generations to generations. So these were pulled from Rio Techlin years ago. Also, another Dr. Miller brought them back from research. Like I said, I do some off-the-wall live bearers. Let me see if I can get her for you. Can you see that fish behind the plant? She's right under that log. See the tip? Like, I don't know. She's literally here to the right. I'm sorry.
I'm on my laptop, so everything's so much smaller, so I really can't see that well.
Well, anyway, I'll show her babies here in a few minutes. This is Balanosox brasiliensis. They're known as the live-bearing pikefish. There she is.
Oh, that was the fish?
Yeah.
I thought that was the log.
I'm trying to see there she is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big girl.
Yeah, she's pushing 6 or 7 inches long now.
Is that full size?
Oh yeah. She can probably get about another inch. The males usually get a little smaller. The males get to be about 5 or 6, but the females get to be pretty big. That's a good girl. Come on out, sis. So it's funny. I named her B'Elanna after the character on Star Trek. I'm like, Balanosox, B'Elanna. It makes sense. Yep. But there was an interesting story with this fish. When I ordered this fish, I got them from a gentleman that was a mutual friend of a friend, and I was supposed to get a pair because I wanted to breed them. When I got them, I just got the female, and I emailed him. I said, "Hey, I was supposed to get a pair." He goes, "Oh, that was my mistake. I apologize." He made everything right, so I was happy with that. But 3.5 months later, she dropped 30 fry. So what's interesting about these fish, do you know how guppies can sometimes hold sperm and the female can impregnate herself?
Yep.
So this girl was in my fish room for either 3.5 to 4 months and then impregnated herself, and she had 30 babies.
Wow. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. So.
Now, do you get a lot of those on a regular basis, or is that the first time?
No. So I'll show you the babies here in a few minutes. The babies were born in late June, early July, and they're just starting to sex out now. They're slow growers, and it takes them a while to sex out.
Now, do they eat their babies too?
You know what? They're high predatory fish. So as soon as I saw, it was funny. I'm like, what the heck's in the tank moving around? I almost for a minute thought I had detritus worms. And then I looked, I'm like, those are fish. And I was fortunate that she had dropped them shortly before I came into the fish room that day, and I pulled them out. But these fish are a predatory fish. They're known, yep. Everyone says, oh, you have to feed, they'll only eat live, they'll only eat live. I don't disagree with that, but I'm pretty fortunate here because my guys will eat anything I put in the tank.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So here's one of my favorite Xenotoca. These are Xenotoca variata, Jesus Maria. And the males, they look similar to Amicus splendens, but the males get that deep bronze gold coloration.
So they're prettier than the Amicus, in my opinion.
Yeah, they have similar markings to them. So
yep.
Everyone wants this fish, but I'm currently growing the numbers of them.
Well, yeah, isn't it better to get a couple colonies going before you start letting any go? And we have
yeah. So one thing I learned from Greg Sage is a mentor of mine. He said, if you have less than 50 fish, you shouldn't sell them. So
that makes sense.
This is my main colony of Amicus splendens. It's in a 33 long, and you can see it's filled. So I started all my colonies initially from this line. And
Wow.
there's always babies, always. And I just colony breed these guys. If I see something wrong with a baby, I remove it quickly. One of the things I do with all my colony, I do breed some colony, and then there's others I do what I call target breeding, where I'll put a male and 2 females, and as soon as I see the female pregnant, I'll remove her. Some of the fish here I do in colony breeding, but with colony breeding, you really have to pay attention to the babies when they're dropped, making sure that you're not continuing, in case there's any issue, that you're not continuing that through the bloodline.
Makes sense.
I've probably got 250 Amica Splendens in house right now.
Wow.
So I'll tell you what, I bought this tank. This is the 60 breeder. I love this tank. So this
Oop, did we lose you?
Hitas, Milwaukee, Mexico.
Oh, looks like we lost him, guys. Hopefully we can get him back here in here any second. So far, so awesome. I'm enjoying it. Hi, Christine. Hey, Jeff. Joe, you have a decent bars from Greg Sage. Yes, Joe does. We're supposed to send some to Dan. Thanks for tuning in, Dan. I appreciate it, brother. How you fish doing? Peppermints are growing. They're doing great, by the way. What else we got? Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you guys, Into the Future sent me a pair of Fistogramma Hongzai, which are beautiful. Starting to color up nice right now. Yes, you are enjoying it. I am enjoying it too. It's nice to see how in-depth he goes with everything. It makes me feel like a novice. Like I got to step my game up. Oh, looks like he's.
Oh,
Welcome
did you lose me for a minute?
We did. It was okay.
I'm sorry about that. I was wondering what was going on. So I don't know if you saw the pea puffers.
No, we didn't. We lost you back at the other tank.
Oh, at the tower eye?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Now, question with Tower Eye, because I got Tower Eye too, and my females, as soon as they give birth, they keep passing away.
What
Why
are you
would they do
feeding
that?
them?
Huh?
What are you feeding the females?
So I've been giving them some flakes. Giving them like once a week. I've been doing a little bit of brine shrimp with them. I've been doing zucchini with them. I do an herbivore pellet with them.
Hit them up with a little bit more nutritional fiber. So they're dying when they're giving birth, correct?
After they give birth, yeah, they pass away in their stomach. They're
So this is the hypothesis that a lot of guys talk about. I'm not saying that's exactly what it is, but there are some researchers that feel that if some of the fish are given too much protein, if you're feeding the mother too much protein, the babies can get a little large and make it difficult for the females to pass them. I'm not 100% on board with that, but I would definitely try some more fiber in the diet and help with that. Another thing, are any of the babies surviving?
the babies are surviving, but they're coming out almost over half an inch long. They're coming out massive.
Yeah, so they come out pretty big to begin with. So I'm not saying that this hypothesis is true, but it could, if let's say if it were, then you would cut down some of that protein. All of my Goodeids, unless they're the Cracodons are the ones I give the most protein, but all of them get fiber daily with some sort of plant material or vegetable to help push with all of that. And like I said, some researchers feel that when you're giving Goodeids too much protein, the babies overdevelop and then they have trouble passing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because like I said,
But I'm not saying that's exactly what it is. That's still a hypothesis that they're true. But there's a common thread with a lot of people that are losing their females when they're giving birth. And the common thread is they were giving these fish a lot of protein. So that's the common thread. So
Yeah, because I only have this issue with the Taurite, because I have the Amicas. They don't have that issue. And I also have the Xenotocas, and I never had that issue with them either.
okay, so here's the thing I would recommend. So your Amica splendens and your Xenotocas have they're omnivore, but but I would give them more plant-based matter too to help with all that, because they can have some issues just like the Scyphia. So,
Yep. Okay.
so these are the adults of my Scyphia multipunctata, Lago de Camaquaro, and I'm looking to find that male that has all that black, and of course he's hiding. Maybe I'll come back to him.
All right.
Now, here's another, this is the same species of Scyphia multipunctata, but this is a different location. So you'll see there's a difference in this location. The males don't get as much black on them as Lago de Camaquaro. And in this situation, this is where the location data is important so that you know which location you have.
Yep. It's a pretty little fish too.
Yeah. I have probably 200 of those right now here in the fish room. And of course, the minute I come over here, these guys hide. So these are, let me see if I can get them. These are Xenotoca melanosoma. These fish are now in a special breeding program because they're about to become extinct in the wild. This is called the blackfin goodiad. They're pretty shy, as you can see, but they're coming out a little more. Here we go. I'm growing the numbers of these guys. I'm probably not going to have them available this year. I currently only have about 30 of them, and they're just starting to produce more for me. But they're neat little fish. They're just a little timid. And so what I do with them, I'm putting some more plants in. I'm rescaping this tank, and I need to put a little bit more plants to make them feel a little more comfortable. Here's one some of you may know. This is Chapelictes pardalis. This is from Presa de San Juanico, Milwaukee, Mexico. This one is similar in the family line to Amica splendens. Very prolific, decent sized fish. Not much color on them, but what I like about them, if you want to start out with a goodiad and get your feet wet, so to speak, this is a good bloodline to start with. Now, these are Xenotoca lion's eye. So people mistake them with Doadrua, but this is actually different. They're a little bigger. Their orange is a little bit more pronounced, and these guys come from Rio Tamazula, which is the location for their bloodline. So here's the baby Bologna socks. I showed you them on. Here's the babies. There's about 30 of them in here.
Wow.
Yeah. So these guys were born late June, early July last year, and they're only about 2 inches long right now. And literally, like, the reason they're up front is they think I'm going to feed them.
No, what do you feed them regularly?
So I give them a little bit of everything. So when I first got the Bologna socks, everyone's like, Ed, you're going to hate it. They'll only take live food. I probably feed my adult female live food once a week. So I feed freeze-dried krill, frozen shrimp, things like that. The little guys right here will even take high-quality flake food. So, really? and the female that I have, their mother, she was wild caught. So it wasn't like she was used to prepared foods or whatever. She was wild caught, and she takes freeze dried and stuff too. So I can appreciate where people say, oh, they only take live, but my guys, I haven't had that issue. Knock on wood. So what I plan on doing with these guys is letting them pair off. I'm going to keep a couple for mine to grow numbers. And hopefully next year I'll be able to start offering these on my website. So here, I'll show you this. Here's one. Let me find him. I don't know if you can see the gonopodium on that guy.
Yeah, I can.
So the males are just starting to develop. A few weeks ago, you couldn't even see those. So they're late bloomers, so to speak. So if you were going to breed these fish, they usually probably, I would say it would take them about a year before they can produce.
No, I'm definitely going to probably want a pair of these from you in the future.
What's that?
I said I'll definitely probably want a pair of these from you in the future when they're ready.
They're cool. I mean, I'll tell you, they're one of my favorites.
Well, one of my favorite fish is the rocket gars, but you know,
yeah,
tricky
they look similar to a rocky gar. So these are some more Scyphia multipunctata tandis aquara from growing out. Here's another. This was my initial colony of blue-tailed goodiad, also from the Antiochidas, Milwaukee, San Marcos, Milwaukee, Mexico. Now here's one everyone knows. This was probably one of the very first fish I got from Greg Sage. This is Xenotoca doadrui. I probably have 200 of these.
Wow.
Yeah. I have 3 different colonies set up throughout the rooms. I have 2 fish rooms working right now.
No, I found they grow really slow for me. They grow really slow for you too.
What's that?
Do you find they grow really slow compared to the amicas?
You know what I've noticed? Here's what I've noticed. It depends on what time of the year they're born. I'm noticing some of my fish, when they start, if they have babies during the spring and summer, those babies grow a lot faster. I sometimes have fish that will drop during the winter. These guys, I would say, I've had other goodies that take longer to grow out. But I could see where you would think that. Okay. And like I said, I colony breed these guys. So these guys, I just have the tank heavily planted, and I let the female drop the babies right in the tank. And as you can see, they may eat 1 or 2 here and there, but they're not a heavy predator on their babies. So these are my Iliodon furcidens, the trout goodiad. This is Greg Sage's bloodline. I have 2 separate bloodlines of this fish. This fish is a goodiad that is not critically endangered. And like I said, I do have a few fish in the fish room that I don't have ESUs for. This is one of them. So this particular colony came from Greg Sage. And I have another colony I'll show you here in a few minutes that came from a really good friend of mine in the area that we've been exchanging fish for a few years. So I used to breed cichlids. And I got out of cichlids a few years ago, but this was one of my favorite fish, and I always wanted them. So these are the Malawi blue dolphins. And I have a breeding colony. There's 8 right now, and they're about 10 inches long.
Oh, they look great. That's one. I love those too, and I love the star sapphires.
Yeah. I wanted to try star sapphires when I was doing cichlids, but I've had so many people say star sapphires are just so aggressive.
Yeah, I never tried them either because I heard they're a little too large and a little too aggressive. And so
yeah.
Do it.
Well, what's happening with this colony, that big male right there in the middle, he's really starting to dominate over everyone else. So I'm going to have to move them to something bigger or split the colony up some. But I got rid of all of my cichlids, but I didn't have the heart to get rid of those guys because they're my favorite. Here's my other bloodline of the trout goodiad. And this one really produces well for me. They're already starting to drop babies.
Nice. They look great.
These guys get to be about 5, sometimes 6 inches long.
Wow, they get pretty big, huh?
Oh, yeah. They're neat little fish. What I like about them, as you can see, they're not skittish. They can be a little nippy. So if you wanted to put them in a community tank with other things, I would recommend large tetras, barbs, things like that could kind of hold their own with them.
Yep. I like how they kind of swim slowly too, so they're not like kind of sporadic.
Yeah. So this was a breeding program I did a few months back with FBI and Harlequin rasboras. Like I said, I do special things for the BAP program with my club. So, now here we go. Here's a good one for you, where you'll see the male. This is Crocodon audax Los Pinos. There's the color I was telling you about.
Oh, that red with the black.
Yeah. And this isn't the best male. I'll show you one of those here in the future. So we're coming up on what I call Crocodon Island. So I have 18 tanks in the middle of the fish room in the island where I breed crocodons. This is Crocodon audax altabaso. It's known as the Black Prince. And there's a little male that just shot by. I'm hoping I have a male that comes up close. But the males have these really rich black fins. Here he comes. And he's still a baby. He's only about 4.5 months old.
Wow, that black really pops, huh?
Yeah. And this is Crocodon audax lateralis. Let me find you some. Like I said, they hide when I shut the air off for streaming. I don't know if you can see him.
I see him around the vase. Little paws.
Yeah. Yeah, the males are a really nice red. I have some more colonies I'm going to probably show you. This is my F1 generation of Scyphia francese from Aqua Lab. These guys are old enough to start producing now. And like I said, this is the bloodline of Scyphia francese that was reintroduced back into the wild, and I was able to get some of them.
That's exciting. That's really exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Los Pinos. There's female. Oh, here we go. There's a Black Prince you'll be able to see. That's the male.
Yep. No, he's stunning looking. Now you make me want to put Black Prince in my fish room.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm working on. So I've had a lot of people asking me about El Tabaso, the Black Prince, this year, and I'm currently growing the numbers on them. So I'm only down to about 20 some of them right now. So I really need to build my numbers before I can have them available on my website.
No, is anybody else working with them like you are that you know of, or?
There are a few people working, but with not as many colonies as I have. So what I did last year, I didn't sell too many of my fish last year to rebuild the bloodlines. So one of the things I do, but a lot of people may not know, Goodeids breed best just as they're sexing out up until 2 years old. When they get to be 2 years old, I retire them because they usually don't produce more. So what I was doing last year was retiring fish, rehoming the fish that I had as retired fish, and building new bloodlines. So that's what a lot of this is this year. So this tank has slightly green water, but you'll be able to see there is Crocodon audax Crocodon lateralis. I'm sorry. This is Crocodon lateralis Los Barros. So these fish come from the same waterway as the audax. The difference is they're separated by a waterfall. These guys are under the waterfall, and all of the audax are above the waterfall. Here's one now.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah. There's a decent one of them male.
Yeah, no, he's pretty.
There we go.
Yep. I see the reds.
Yeah. And then down on the other side, this is just grow outs, babies I'm working with. So here's what I do. Here's the price. So these tags that are on the tanks, those are the labels, also with their ESUs and all that. I keep that there so that they don't get mixed up and they can be identified just by looking. Because, like I said, some of them look exactly the same. There's another colony of butterfly.
Can I ask
Growing
you a
up,
question?
some lateralis babies here. Los Pinos. And here's some multipunctata that are about 6 months old. And they're already starting to sex out. And believe it or not, they already have babies in with them.
Wow. Now, I noticed you don't keep lids on your tanks. Do you ever find they hop into different tanks?
No, so here's what it is. I'll show you what I do. I have to put the lids back on this. I do these types of screen. What this is that cross stitch kind of canvas,
Yep.
that art canvas. There's a reason why I do that with Goodyears. So these tanks, I have to put them back on when I'm done.
Okay.
Goodyears are jumpers.
I know. That's why I was curious. I'm like, how does he not have crossbreeding with them to open
But
lids?
but what Goodyears also need is they need to have good air circulation and gas exchange. When you put a glass lid on their tank, first off, it's going to heat your water up more. And then they're not getting as good airflow at the surface for gas exchange. And over time, that's detrimental to Goodyears. So what I do is this so that I get good air circulation at the surface, good gas exchange, and my tanks don't heat up. So the first year I was working with Goodyears, I was using glass lids, and I lost quite a few fish my first year in the summer. And Greg Sage, who was my mentor, said, yeah, you don't want to put glass lids on. So as soon as I took the glass lids off, I saw a difference. But like I said, they're jumpers, so you have to have something. So I found this is the best stuff to use for them, because another thing too is I have full spectrum grow light, and it also diffuses some of the light. So my plants seem to do a lot better with that diffusing of light as opposed to full spectrum, because when they were getting the full print of the light,
Yep.
I was getting a lot of algae growth.
Oh, okay, good to know.
And I'll take you quickly over to the other side. So like I said, I have 2 fish rooms. Oh, hold on. Sorry. My lights went out.
How much time do you spend in your fish rooms a week?
It's a full-time job for me, and I also work too. But I have a business partner that helps me out a lot too. He'll come over and help out. If I didn't have a business partner to help me, there's 100 to 110 aquariums at any given time. If I didn't have someone to help me, there's no way I'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't do automatic water changes. We do everything manual.
I noticed that. That's why I asked. That's a lot of work.
So these are some more butterfly Goodyears. I have some baby lateralis in here. Some more melanosoma. So I'll show you what we have to do. So I'm on well water.
Okay.
So I live by a creek that has sulfur in it. Now my water from my well doesn't have sulfur, but it has sulfur gas. So I have to aerate my water for 24 hours before I can use it. And the thing about it, so an automatic water change isn't going to work. So that's why I do everything manually.
Looks like we lost you. Hi, Shirley. Hi, Dr. Ted. Christine.
Sorry, I lost you. Hold on.
No worries.
I went to flip the screen to come back. There we go. Sorry about that. That's basically it. Like I said, I have more tanks where I'm growing out babies and stuff, but you've basically seen every species I work with.
Yep.
And like I said, it's not perfect. It's a working fish room, so you may see some things. So I have a few tanks that have some green water, but I use that green water to feed babies. It's the best stuff I can feed for cories and stuff. So, you know, um, and I literally do water changes every day of the week.
Every day of the week.
But that's about what I do here. And like I said, if anyone's interested in anything, they can reach out to me. I have my website, which you guys were showing last week, that shows my availability and stuff. I only ship in the continental U.S. So, and if anyone has any questions, and it doesn't, feel free to reach out and ask me. I'm happy to help.
No, I enjoyed your fishing tour. I love how much you know about every single fish. You got like a backstory to everything.
Yeah. Well, so I some people look at me a little strange because of the way I take it. But what I find interesting about these fish that I work with, there is a history, and if we lose that history, we've lost a great portion of what these fish are about. And if we lose them in the wild, people are like, "Oh, it's only a fish. It's only a fish." Well, that fish is a critical part of an ecosystem.
Yep.
That ecosystem helps feed and provide water and resources to the people in that area. And over time, it becomes a great impact. So I kind of look at it in a different way. And I enjoy the history. I enjoy the history. So what a lot of people may not know is the tiger limia that were just a few years ago described.
Yeah.
The gentleman that discovered those fish passed away a few years ago. And if we don't hold on to that history, we lose a portion of what he contributed into our community. So that's why I like to keep all of that information as much as possible.
No, I get it. I enjoyed it. It makes me want to know more about all the fish I keep, to be honest, and kind of open my eyes and change my perception a lot more on things. You know what I mean? The way that I've always looked at fish.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. See if people have any questions for you.
Sure.
Joe, have you ever kept Greg Sage's Odessa barbs?
The Odessas, I actually have them right now. They're old enough to start spawning. I'm going to be spawning them in the next month or so. So yeah, what's interesting about Greg's bloodline of Odessa barbs, they usually don't start sexing out till they're about 10 months old to a year old. And that's one of the reasons why that particular line isn't very popular in the hobby, because stores can't wait that long for something to sex out, and people want the males because they're more colorful. So this particular bloodline is very difficult to find. You're not going to find it in a retail establishment. You're going to find it through a private breeder. I would show them to you, but I have them in a heavily planted tank. You're not going to see them. I'm fishing them right now. But what's different about these fish, Greg Sage's bloodline are very big, robust fish, and the males are deep scarlet red. There's a definite difference in the quality and the coloration. But I do have them, and I'm hoping to have fry from them in the next few months.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, Joe. There you go. Because Joe recently bred them himself. He's all excited.
Yeah. Greg's bloodline?
Yeah, he bought Greg Sage's from... I forget who we got. You got it from Greg Sage. Yeah, you did get it from Greg Sage.
If you don't mind me making a recommendation, save some of those fish and split them up into a couple different colonies. There are very few of us working with this bloodline, and this bloodline is diminishing, and this is a special bloodline of Odessas. So if you have the space where you can split them up into a couple different colonies, I'd recommend you do that, because less and less people are working with them, and they're a special line that needs to be maintained.
Good to know. You heard them, Joe? All right. Margaret and John. He wouldn't shut up. I had to let him out. Does Ed go and repopulate wild areas with his fish from where his fish come from? So you repopulated one species, right? Correct?
We repopulated Zucchineticus tequila, the tequila split fin, and we repopulated Scyphia francesa, the gold Scyphia. So here's what's important to remember. The fish that we have in the hobby right now, they were collected in the 90s and early 2000s. So these fish that we have right now in the hobby have been at minimum a decade or not longer in the hobby. A lot of these fish have dwindled in numbers and are either critically endangered or extinct in the wild. So that's why I say to people, if you really want to work with conservation with these fish, maintaining the ESU and the location data and everything is really important, so that when, like I said, when you register with CARES, they keep your information in a database. So if they're ever looking to repopulate or know where these bloodlines are within the hobby, they have that access to that. And that's why it's so important. Because what it is, so I always tell people this. I have no problem with people that work with ornamental fish. I love some ornamental fish, such as, the different color mutations, the guppies and things. But working with critically endangered fish is completely different. Where in the ornamental hobby, you're working to develop a new color, a new bloodline, a long fin or whatever. If you're doing critically endangered fish and wanting for conservation, you're maintaining those fish in their true form, and you're maintaining the documentation and updating that documentation regularly. So it's two different animals, so to speak. So I tell people, it's decide what you want to work with best. I've had people say, well, the wild fish aren't that colorful. You just saw some of my fish. I have fish in this room that are wild fish that are deep red, blacks, blues. It's just what you like and what you don't like. But that's the difference with working with critically endangered fish, is if you're going to want to maintain these bloodlines in their true form, you have to maintain all that information. And I don't mean to demean anyone or be disrespectful, but right now in this country, a lot of people are falling short with that. I don't think they're doing it deliberately. I think they just don't understand what it is to work with these fish. And that's one of the reasons why I started my channel, is so people have a better understanding of how to work with them.
No, I get it, because a lot of my the G'dayids I've got all came from my fish club.
Yeah.
And they'll tell me, like, they never write it on the bags. They'll just tell you, yeah, they came from such, but then you never see them again, so you kind of forget about it, because I'm not going to lie, my memory sucks.
That's why. And when I realized what direction I wanted to take my fish room, all of the fish that are here in my fish room come from 5 private breeders who I know that work with the CARES program, work with the ALA, work with the Goodyear Working Group, and all of their fish are confirmed. But that's the choice I made. Yeah. So at the risk, I don't want to, at the risk of sounding overbearing, I really wish the clubs would be a little bit more cognizant of people, what they're dispensing out into the community when it comes to critically endangered fish, and realize that giving people options and explaining to them, because there's always going to be those people that will just do whatever they want. Yep. But I really feel that if most people understood the importance of maintaining all that information, most people would say, well, I want to do that. But not sharing that information with them is a big disservice to these fish. So that's one of the reasons I am a speaker for the CARES program. And, I'm always willing to help people because it is a lot different than just producing a fish.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I'll see if we have any more questions in here. Anybody else have any more questions for Ed tonight? I have a question for you. So out of all the fish, what made you go with the G'dayids and the Scyphias?
What's that?
What made you choose to go with G'dayids and Scyphias out of all the fish to choose from?
So it's been 6 years. So to make a long story short, I was working for a big pet food company, joined my job, and then COVID hit, and we were all shut down, and some of us lost our jobs and everything. I was at home one night really depressed, and I said, well, I'll watch some YouTube and look at some fish. And I came across a video from Greg Sage. And after watching that video, I'm like, this is the best of both worlds for me.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm interested in learning more. So I've only been working with critically endangered fish for 6 years. I've been in the hobby almost 50. But it was Greg Sage's video that triggered that, it sparked that interest. And I emailed him the next day. I said, what's the worst that's going to happen? He won't respond to me. The very next morning, he responded. And since then, we chat regularly. He's become my mentor and a good friend. And he really sparked an interest with me. And they're just the fish that I chose to really work with. Because for me, I'm working with some really cool fish. I'm sharing them in the hobby. But I'm also, in my own way, doing my own part to conserve the lines of these fish. So it just works best. And like I said, I must be enjoying what I'm doing, because right now there's 100 aquariums in the fish room. It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. That's kind of how I got into them. Years ago, I used to import guppies and bring stuff like that. But I got to a point I wanted to offer something in my fish room that maybe you're not going to see on a day-to-day basis. And then with working with the conservation, it just fell in line.
Gotcha. That makes sense. It's funny. The first thing that made me like Dave was his tour video of Greg Sage's. I saw the Xenotokas, and I was like, wow, this is something I'd never seen before. The colors.
Yeah, well, see, Greg has cut back on a lot of his fish. And he was here 2 years ago to my fish room. He's like, Ed, you have all of the stuff that I no longer carry. So he actually refers people to me with cracodons, scipias, and stuff like that. So he was here 2 years ago, and he smiled. He's like, this is bloodlines of stuff I used to work with that I no longer work with. But yeah, he was here, and like I said, I actually had a gentleman here that was here to speak for our club, Andreas Honka. Some of you may have heard of him. He's from Germany. He was here in my fish room about a year ago, and he said this is the most Goodeids he's seen in one place ever. And like I said, I'm currently working anywhere between 15 and 17 different species. Some of the species I have 5 and 6 colonies of, so just maintain the numbers.
No, you have definitely the most species I've ever seen in a video, never mind even heard of.
Yeah, and there's a few others we could have gone through, but like I said, it's all babies, a lot of it. So every species I have, you've seen every species I have. But it's like I said, one of the things I learned early on with these fish, if you want to maintain these bloodlines, don't leave them all in one tank. So, break them up into different colonies and keep track of them and stuff, because I've been doing this for years, and every so often something will happen to a tank. If something happens to a tank and I lose all the fish, I want to make sure I don't lose that bloodline. So that's why I do so many different colonies of them.
Yep. So even like you've been in the hobby for 50 years, even though like random things do happen and tanks do crash.
Absolutely.
I hear people go, oh, you're not experienced enough. You don't know what I'm like. It happens. Randomly can just happen. Something can just crash. pH.
Anything can happen. Anything, and anyone who says that doesn't happen to them, they'll lie to you, because it can happen to any of us. So what I tell people, if you have a fish that you really want to work with and maintain numbers and really put out into the hobby, separate them into, have a couple colonies and a couple tanks, so that you can keep those numbers. So generally what I tell people, what I recommend, I shouldn't say tell, what I recommend, if you're purchasing Goodeids, purchase them, from someone reliable.
Yep.
But also understand that if you want to dispense them out into the hobby, generally what I recommend, your first year, keep your bloodline and build a couple different colonies so that you can maintain those. Because what a lot of people do, as their babies are being born, they're dispensing them out to the hobby, and then if something happens to their tank, they've lost the bloodline.
Yeah.
So I build my bloodline. What I also do is I have a couple of friends that have my bloodline, so that if something happens that I don't have, I can get back from them. So always have that resource, because if you really want to work with these fish, you always want to make sure you have that bloodline available.
No, I agree. Anything that I get that's hard to find, I always split it up.
Yeah.
I always split it up just because it took me forever to get them, and I got a group. I just split them up. I'll put them in 3, 4, 5 different tanks. That way, God forbid, I always got a backup group just to pull out if need be. Because I've done that too, or learned that the hard way a bunch of times in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's what I find a lot of it is trial and error over the years. You know, you screw up, and you can't do that again.
Yeah. I have a lot of new hobbyists that are so hard on themselves. Oh, I did this. And I tell them, did you do it deliberately? Well, of course not. Well, then it's a mistake. It's an honest mistake. But when I see what I call the old timers like me saying, oh, nothing like that ever happens to me, I'm going to look them in the face and call them out. Because what that does, that sends a false narrative out to the community that oh, I don't have that much experience. This is what happens. I shouldn't do this. I don't care how much experience you have, how versed you think you are in something. Anything can happen at any given time. It happens to all of us. You know, a couple years ago, over the winter, this was like 3 years ago, over the winter. Thank God it was during the winter when I don't ship. I had an ick outbreak in my fish room.
Yep.
I lost a ton of fish. It can happen to any of them. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I tell people that happened because I don't want people thinking, oh, this happened to me, I'm a terrible hobbyist. It can happen at any given time.
Yeah, no, I've had it happen more times than I can count. And like I said, those Xenotocas, I had them for almost 2.5, 3 years. They were going straight, strong, no issue. Then all of a sudden, my whole colony wiped out in like a couple weeks. Yeah.
So what I do with the Xenotoca lines, I feed them nori. So the nori sheets, I get the nori kelp sheets. I put it in a coffee grinder, break it down to a flake. I feed that a couple times a week. So the foods that I feed in my fish room, I look for limited ingredients. I look for stuff. For instance, if a flake food spirulina, and spirulina is not in the top 5 ingredients, that's not spirulina.
No.
You know,
cornmeal.
Well, I tell people, how many fish do you know get up onto land to eat soybean? It's all cheap filler and it's not digestible. My fish room, I feed limited ingredient things. What I like about the nori, it's one ingredient, and I get it where it's not high heat dried, it's air dried.
Yep.
It's not destroying all the enzymes. And I pulverize that down into a manageable flake, and I feed that a couple times a week in my Skiffia. I've been doing that for about 6 months. There's a noticeable difference in my Skiffias. Have not lost any fish to bloat. No issues with constipation, nothing. It really works. And like I said, it's one ingredient, so you know what it is. And I've been doing that. So with the Xenotocas, I'd recommend feeding them.
Okay, I'll definitely get some nori.
And your butterflies will benefit from that too.
Because those guys, they just devour zucchini like it's water. I'll throw a whole zucchini and they'll destroy it.
You see how many colonies I have. Anywhere between, I'd have to count 5 or 7 different colonies of them.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, do I really need all these fish? But the thing about it is, the Nika splendens within the next year is probably going to be extinct in the wild. It's in 2 small micro-endemic locations now, and their numbers are dwindling. So the thing about it is, maintaining the numbers of these fish is important. So the one waterway that they're left in has been dammed up and is used for the villagers as a water source for swimming. They bathe in it, and it's also a water source for them. The waterway is actually dammed up with cement blocks.
Really?
And their numbers are dwindling, and there's another small area where their numbers are dwindling too. So that's why I'm maintaining them. Everyone's like, oh, I can get a butterfly squiddids anywhere. Yeah, you probably can. But are you getting confirmed bloodline? And how long have the people been maintaining that bloodline? And like that's If I had to give an honest, respectful critique, the BAP programs, and I participate in the BAP program, but if I had to give one honest, respectful critique of BAP programs with clubs, is it's produce a fish, move to the next. Produce a fish, move on to the next. And that's part of the BAP program. That's not the case with critically endangered fish. The goal is maintaining these bloodlines. So it's not just breed this bloodline, get rid of it. Find a species that you enjoy and work with them for quite a few years, developing the bloodline. I've seen a difference in my Xenotoka dowadroi in the last 6 years from what they looked like when I first got them to what they are now. Because through each generation, as they adjust to your water, their colors get more vibrant, especially when you're feeding them an appropriate diet. So the fish that I got 6 years ago, there's more color in mine now, and I'm not selectively breeding, I'm colony breeding, but because they're over time they're adjusting better to my water and they're getting quality foods. Over time you develop that line. But that's the goal with critically endangered fish, is maintaining them for years, not just moving on to the next. Just so happens I'm one of those people that have the luxury of a space and I can maintain as many tanks as I have. A lot of people don't have that. So I feel very fortunate with that.
Now you said like there's different species that like just barely separated, but they all look very similar, correct?
So Xenotoka eiseni complex. So that consists of Xenotoka eiseni, Xenotoka lion's eye, and Xenotoka dowadroi.
Yep.
Up until 2016, all three species were actually considered one. But what they did DNA sequencing and found that there's actually three species. And what happened, these fish separated into small bodies of water, and over time through evolution evolved into different species. So that is why the location data for the eiseni complex is important. Eiseni is in a couple different locations. Lion's eye is in 1 to 2 locations. One location that's most known is Kamatula, and dowadroi are in San Marcos. So what I tell people, if you don't have the location and ESU data for them, you can't confirm them.
Yep.
So that is one complex line from CARES that you absolutely have to have the ESU and location to confirm. So what has happened, and again, I'll say this, I don't think people are doing it deliberately.
Yep.
But a lot of people, they're all labeled under the common name red-tailed goodie. So if people want to know what gets under my skin, is when people common label goodeids, because all of the eiseni complex are labeled red-tailed goodeiid. So if you don't have the scientific name and you don't have the location, you don't know what it is. So like I said at the beginning of the stream, that's why in the last year there have been almost 10, if not more, registrations. People wanted to register their eiseni complex that were actually hybrids. So that's why it's important to keep that data.
That makes sense. Now, do you think if say eiseni are kept in the aquariums, say like 20, 25 years later, do you think that would be almost a different fish, that fish would adapt it differently, that if you were to reintroduce it, it'd be kind of different?
So it's possible. So it would be, because the thing is, it's possible that it could alter it a little bit. But the thing about it is, because technically you would be doing the same thing that would happen if they isolate in waterways.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, it takes quite a long time. Because your evolution takes a multitude of years to develop. Most of these fish, the way what we're doing, they're isolating. There may be a little bit of a difference in coloration or whatever, but from a genetic level, they're not going to change.
Yeah, because I don't know if like the environment would make a huger difference on them, because it's going from their natural wild to whatever we're providing for them. If they're going to adapt differently to that,
that is a valid point. That is a valid point.
You know, because the pH is going to be different. You're going to have different alkalinity, hardness. That, say, 25 years from now, if you were to reintroduce them into the wild, would they be able to survive in that conditions?
Well, the thing, it's interesting you would bring that up, because I know quite a few people that have Xenotoka dowadroi.
Yep.
each person's line that is confirmed, they are doagoi. There's something that looks a little different about theirs. My guys have really bright orange tails, and when the males go into season, they get like that mother of pearl blue that's really deep and intense. But I've had this line for 6 years, and I've been working with it. So yeah, over time they can have some little changes in their bodies, coloration or whatever. But just from isolation, because it's the same way if they would be isolated in the wild in a waterway. You're doing it in a water here. So yeah, it's possible. It would just, in order for it to change into either a different species or alter the genetic bloodline, it would take years of.
Yeah, but it would just be slight altercations over time, though. You would see fish from color to temperament versus, so it is possible. But okay, no, I was just curious because when you said there's 3 different waterways, 3 different types, but they all look the same, all labeled the same, I was wonder if isolating them for hobby would change completely too.
And that's why I tell people, I'm like, you know what? I'm not insinuating people are doing things deliberately, because if you don't know the information and you look at these fish, you think, oh, it's the same fish. But it really is. They really aren't. And that's why it's important for people that have experience with these fish to share their information.
Yep.
That's why I started my channel. Is I want to be able. I want people, because a lot of people want to do right by these fish and they want to learn about them, but not too many people are teaching them the fundamental principles in husbandry to make. So a lot of people are making honest mistakes. And it's easily corrected if they're given the information.
Yeah, well, makes sense. And I feel like today a lot of people definitely learned a lot more about the G'days, the Skifias, and more of the importance of the location for the long run. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing I tell people too. Goodeids are not the only critically endangered fish. So if anyone's interested in looking on what types of fish are critically endangered, go on to www.caresforfish.org. So I'll give you a little tidbit that some people are surprised. How many of you have had cherry barbs? Do you know that cherry barbs are a critically endangered species?
Really? I would have never thought that.
The cherry barbs that we get into our aquariums are critically endangered in the wild. There are critically endangered barbs, there's critically endangered tetras, cichlids. So if goodeids are not your thing, there are all different types of species and different genuses that are critically endangered. Find one that works for you. Cichlids. I have a friend in Canada that specializes in cichlids. He has some very rare and critically endangered cichlids, and his fish room is about as big as. So it's not. So I just kind of focus in on goodeids and some of the other livebearers, but there's all different types of critically endangered fish.
Yep.
And when I tell people that cherry barbs are critically endangered, the look on their face is funny. They're like, what? They're critically endangered fish.
I would have never thought cherry barbs, they breed so easily.
But here's the thing to remember with critically endangered fish.
Yep.
So the cherry barb, a long fin cherry barb, if there's any type of color mutation or any type of finish change, they're not considered a critically endangered. That is a morph. Anything that morphs from a critically endangered line is not critically endangered. They have to be intact in their main form, natural form.
Okay, that makes sense though.
White clouds are critically endangered.
That's funny because in Massachusetts they were illegal for the longest time.
White clouds, again, the normal white cloud is critically endangered, but not the color morphs, not the long fin.
Yep.
Yeah, they're critically endangered fish.
We got some comments. We got Big Steve here. How's it going, Steve?
Hey, Steve.
He picked up 4 bowling socks. Bowling socks. Am I saying that right?
That's the Bologna socks, yeah.
Bologna socks today. Jody here. We got was that Gabe Aquatics, Aqua Balls. Well, I think that was pretty good for today. I really enjoyed it. It was like watching almost like Nat Geo. I learned so much. I really enjoyed it.
I was glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Anything else you want to add up with tonight or follow up with, or are you good?
Like I said, I'm happy to share my information. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to email, message me through my website, my YouTube channel, whatever you like. I'm happy to help. I'm one of those people. I have people say, I have a stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I respect people that are looking for knowledge. And I may not have the answer. And if I don't have the answer, I'm not going to pull something out of my butt saying this is it. Um, I don't know everything. And I tell people I've been in this hobby for 50 years and I learn something new every day. So I just try to help people as best I can. And I hope this encourages people to consider working with some critically endangered.
Yep. Nope. Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to post your website again. I've been posting it all throughout the night so people can go check it out.
Sure.
That way, and like I said, if you have interest in anything, shoot him a message. If he doesn't have it available now, I'm sure by next year, you said you'll have a lot of stuff available. And no, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I guess I'll wrap it up for the night.
All right, buddy. Thanks for having me. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.